everyone, and welcome back to Gimme 5 reviews, book reviews, and author interviews, the channel where we dive deep into books and expand our minds and challenge our reality. Today, I'm beyond excited to introduce someone who's been on both sides of the wire, literally. Paul Vecchiet is not just an author, he's a design manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, a man who's navigated the secrets of military-industrial complex, and now the mysteries of speculative fiction. His debut novel, The Disclosure Paradox, is part sci-fi adventure, part spiritual awakening, and completely rooted in truth, or at least the kind of truth hidden underground, cryogenic facilities beneath military warehouses. Inspired by his own life, meditative experiences, and covert discoveries, Paul uses fiction to reveal things that nonfiction can't always get away with. So buckle up, because today's interview is going to explore everything from extraterrestrials and karma to secret blueprints, spiritual awakening, and whether someone might actually be watching this interview right now. Let's welcome Paul Vecchiet to the show. Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having me here. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, Paul, I'm so excited to dive into this interview, and I know that my listeners are excited to hear everything about your book. It's just fascinating. I mean, the combination, extraterrestrials, karma, secret blueprints, spiritual awakening. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing. So are you ready for question number one?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about the origins and your personal journey. So Paul, let's begin at the beginning. How did a design manager of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers end up writing a spiritually charged sci-fi novel? Was there a moment that pushed you to tell this story?
Yeah, the novel could be autobiographical, and I guide the reader through how the main character, who's based on myself, got to where I am. And it starts out really all the way back to when I was a young critical thinker in Catholic school, about being taught Catholicism, and just having a lot of questions that bothered my teachers, bothered my parents. And I, was the one kid in class that got the lowest grades in Catholicism because I just couldn't get into it. So that was one foundation of getting me on this journey. The second one happened when I was an adolescent, listening to a rock music station, falling asleep, and then waking up to an interview with Eric von Daniken, who was discussing how the Bible had passages that actually described extraterrestrial contact rather than God or angels. And one chapter, which is explicit if you read it, is the book of Ezekiel, where he actually describes the contact. It has clear descriptions about the craft, and even goes to where he is given a ride on the craft, and he explains that he felt the hand of God on his chest. Well, that is G-forces, right? So if you read just that chapter and you pour through it and you read it as if you were investigating, you will find that there's a lot of clues in there that it's not, he's describing something that he misinterpreted. So that's another piece of the puzzle. Later on, I joined the Air Force. After getting a degree in architecture, I joined the Air Force. And on one of my assignments, I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And this was in the late 80s. I was a construction manager. I was an officer there. And my project was in a facility that was called Foreign Technology Division. Now, Foreign Technology Division is the facility or the organization at that time that spied on countries, looked at their weapon systems, looked at their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities that we would have against them. And they would take that information and send it across the base to where we have Aeronautical Systems Division, which is the cradle of research and development for the Air Force. So there, they would take the information and they would develop weapon systems based on that information. Okay. So my project was on the second floor of this facility. And this building is a renovated 2-story warehouse, about 250 feet square. When you got there, it was surrounded by motion detectors. And even if you had a top secret clearance, you were escorted around. Once I got through double doors and I signed in, and I got through double doors, and with my escort, I noticed there was no directory. There were no numbers on the doors, no names on the doors, and everything was white. It looked like, something out of the James Bond movie. And I was told that whoever was in one office did not know what was going on in the next office. They had their own locks, and that was compartmentation to keep, secrets as close to possible, to the people that need to know. All right. So my project was on the second floor, and it was gutted because it was going to have a massive computer system. And my task was to evaluate the condition of the facility against the drawings that the contractor was given, including as-built. And as-built are drawings that indicate the condition of the facility before construction. So I went up there, my escort was reading a book, not watching me. And I took out a roll of drawings that were the as-built, going through them, making sure that everything matched. And then I saw that there was a floor plan for a basement. And now, mind you, this is a warehouse. Warehouses normally are not designed with basements. So I made sure that the outline of the facility matched the outline of the basement, and sure enough, it did. So I realized that we had a hidden basement here in this facility.
Wow, that's really, how did you feel when you saw that?
It was a surprise, and I was still calm, and I flipped the pages some more, and I noticed that there was a detailed floor plan in the basement for a 70-foot by 90-foot cryogenic facility. And I realized that this was information that should not have been in the as-built drawings. Only people that need to know should have known that. And I reasoned that since this was Foreign Technology Division and we had a cryogenic chamber which no one knew about, that it probably had exotic cadavers in there. And
oh my God, really? I mean, did they like oversee that part? Were you meant to see that part of the blueprints for the design?
I don't think that was intentional. No, I think there was an accident. But it's interesting because that roll of drawings existed for so many years, so I'm surprised that it wasn't taken out. And obviously they must have thought that whoever had those drawings had at least a top secret clearance, and they probably thought that the individual would understand the severity of the information and would keep it secret. And I did. I kept that thing secret for 5 years after I left the service. And the interesting thing is that I think what happened when I saw it was could have been, so traumatic that it was filed in the back of my mind, and just kept calm. I didn't. It wasn't like I had pressure to keep a secret, and that it was fighting with me. I just let it alone. So fast forward to 2009, where I got out of service. I was working outside, and then Ancient Aliens turned up, and I started watching it, and it was about the Book of Ezekiel, and it was Eric Von Daniken talking about the same thing that I heard when I was an adolescent. And that, combined with remembering what happened to me at Wright-Patterson, what that did was like an awakening, and I realized I needed to find out more stuff. So from there, I started to become an amateur researcher, and I started to get into information about energy, for example, free energy, or patents that were taken by the government and kept secret in the name of national security, and then other things, about the pharmaceutical industry and education, and a group called ALEC. And I started to get into social media, and the people that were interested in that also had stories about extraterrestrials and contact, and one by one I would meet these people, and I would start to talk to them, but then they would be very defensive about telling me things because they were ostracized by the family. People would say that they're crazy. These people would say that they have contact, that they were abducted, that they had implants. And I realized that these people needed to have a support group. So I set up a group on Facebook called Spirits and Healing, and we had as many as 300 people there, and they all started to talk to each other, and they started to support each other, and it was a good thing. And with the information that I got from these people, and by the way, a lot of these people also were psychic, and they mentioned that they were psychic after they had contact. In other words, they got this ability after they had contact, or after they were abducted, or after they saw these things. And one by one, these psychic people would tell me that I had a role to play. And this was around 2009, 2010, and I thought, okay. And I would also interview them, and I set up a blog that was called The Red Pill. And in The Red Pill, I discussed things about what these people were telling me about conspiracy theories and things like that, and allowed people to interact. And then I lost my job with an outside firm because they changed their marketing scheme. I was hired because I had military background, and I was beyond senior architect. I was a principal architect in a 5,000 person firm. And so anyways, they let me go, and I decided to get back into government. But to do that, I stopped my blog, and I left that spiritual UFO group because I didn't want the government to know that I was involved in that kind of thing, and it would probably be detrimental in my job search. So I stopped all that, but I kept all the information. So
it must have been hard for the group when you left, because a lot of people, I don't know how I could manage holding that experience in, and knowing about that basement for 5 years and not being able to, you didn't physically get to see it, right?
No. Correct.
So I don't know if I could hold it in. So the fact that you were able to give these people a venue to be able to talk to each other, you know, and share this, because I think it would just be so stressful. And they probably really super missed you when you left, but I see where you had to draw that line, because the
Right.
government wouldn't be too favorable about that,
No,
for sure.
no, there was a lot of sensitive information that was being passed around there. And I did make sure that there were 2 or 3 administrators in that group that they trusted. So me leaving didn't hurt that much.
Oh,
And
that's
another thing that I want to mention is a common thing that I found out from being in that group and those spiritual people is that they meditated. So I started to meditate in 2009. And in 2012, I was hired by the government as design manager at the Corps of Engineers. And that's when things started to happen. So I will let you know that among the people that I met in that group was a woman whose mother was former CIA or intelligence, I'm not sure. And before she died, she left her documents about Dulce base, which is an underground joint human extraterrestrial base, which is for a laboratory for testing humans.
Oh my goodness.
And autopsies on aliens. So I was thankful about getting that information.
Wow, that so shocking. I mean, this is something, Paul, that the government tries very diligently to keep from the general public, so there won't be chaos, basically, right? And so for her to leave that diary behind for you is just a treasure trove of information for you, for sure.
Well, we could talk about that, about information and what the government view on information is. But I'd like to add that among the spiritual people and psychics that I met was a woman who she became my spiritual mentor because she was a medium. And what happened was she would get into a trance and she would get information from a higher intelligence, and they would communicate through her to me. And the message I got was just to keep doing what I was doing, and that I was indeed meant to be a counselor and informer. Not a warrior, not a light worker, just a counselor and informer. And, you know, so I kept that in the back of my mind. And little by little, you know, we would have sessions and they would clue me in on things. And one thing that they did is they told me that I would be tested in meditation. So in 2012, after I got hired, I was in meditation, and in meditation, I went through a wormhole. And that was an amazing experience. If you saw the film Contact with Jodie Foster, it was the same experience where it was motion, it was color, my heart was racing, you know, perspiring, and it was vibration. It was just amazing. And then when I realized what was happening, I was back in my body.
And so where were you when this event was happening to you? I mean, were you in a safe place? Because I always imagine when people have these type of events that, you know, you definitely want to be somewhere where you can be safe while all that's happening, right?
I was in an apartment at that time. I located an apartment while my wife remained in the Chicagoland area with our house, you know, trying to sell our house. So for a little less than a year, I was by myself in Winchester, Virginia. So that was one, I guess, meditative experience that was, you know, interesting. And then in 2015, I was meditating, and I saw before me a cloud of indigo. And when I saw the cloud, I also felt a euphoric feeling, something beyond what you can feel as far as happiness here on Earth. As I got closer to the cloud and the cloud dissipated, the euphoria got stronger, and all across the horizon were flashes of indigo. And as I got closer, I got the message of what these flashes of indigo was. It was our spirits between lives, that the flashes indicated either downloading their previous life experience or uploading their next life experience. And it was like a beehive of activity. So it was a cluster. And then the message I got was that these individual spirits combined make up the source energy, which everyone calls God. So again, when I got that information, I was back in my body, and that was it. And those two experiences, and then, you know, there are even more smaller experiences like synchronicities and things that were happening that needed to be told. And I realized with this counselor informer thing, that I could write a book about this. I could write a book about telling people about my journey and about all the people that I met and all the experiences. And so remember, I had that blog. I kept all the information in that blog, and I used that information to put together this book. So I decided one weekend to try and write an outline. And I wrote 31 pages in one weekend of outline. That tells you that I had help. It wasn't something that, especially for a first-time writer, that doesn't happen normally. So I'm pretty sure that I had some sort of help in putting all that together, because it is a complex plot. And I make use of all the characters who are based on real people, and all of my experiences are in there. And I link the extraterrestrial phenomenon to our spirituality. So that after that, I started to put together the manuscript. And here's the another interesting thing. Okay, I wrote the book. I self-published, and that was in 2019. A Benedictine monk, foreign Benedictine monk, searched in Google extraterrestrials and religion and found my book, and he liked it. And then what he did is he sent me information about the shroud. He says, this book is missing information on the shroud, then it would make it complete. And he sent me over 300 documents of research papers from all over the world of researchers that authenticated the shroud. And I started to read it, and I thought, wow, this actually would make a really good book. So I put together an outline, and this was 2 years ago, right? I put together an outline, sent it to him. He liked it. And then I put together a manuscript, 6 months later, sent to him, and he liked it. And then he actually has written the foreword for that novel, and that novel will be coming out in October. And that novel got the attention of an editor and a publisher. And when they found out that I had another book, actually 2 books, and into series, that's how I got the contract for all 3 books. And so this book that we're talking about now was re-released February 18th, 2025, cleaned up a bit, but essentially there's no change in the plot, there's no change in the characters or anything. It's better writing. and I'm very proud of it, and it's doing real well.
Yeah, because now I'm putting this all together. So you had that transformative meditation in 2009, and you tackled a lot of really big spiritual questions: karma, reincarnation, universal connection. I love the blue lights, the indigo lights, and uploading and downloading. That's just fascinating to me. So now those helped you develop the themes of your book, right?
Yes.
How do these ideas connect with the extraterrestrial elements in your story?
All right. So part of the research that I found out was that there was a man, his name is Robert Dean, and he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was psychic. In the Army recruited him because he was psychic, and he was able to telepathically communicate with advanced life forms. So they wanted him to get information from these advanced life forms, and when he found out that their intents were not ethical, and mind you, he's a very spiritual man. He decided to go rogue, and he was communicating with these extraterrestrials, and they explained to him our relationship with the universe, why we are here, and essentially why things are the way they are. And I kind of use that in my book. So here's the deal. After we exploded the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was like a fire alarm throughout the universe, because our scientists did not understand that the release of that energy, that massive amount of energy, not only affected what we saw, but affected other dimensions. And that's why after that, there has been so much activity of UFOs after World War II around the world. And specifically, there has been a lot of interest where we see UFOs around our nuclear facilities, all around. There's a reason for that, because they recognize us as children playing with matches. We don't understand what we are, and that we are spiritually corrupt. We are, our DNA is our original sin, not what the Bible says. So it's a DNA that makes us violent, barbaric, have an irrational obsession with possessions, and being racist to the point of being genocidal. And you combine that with our intelligence, and that makes us the most dangerous species in the universe to them. And that's why we are under what's called a technological and social quarantine. And they want to keep us here. They don't want us to go about, because as the book is called The Disclosure Paradox, and disclosure is the pressure of the public to get the governments and organizations to reveal information about extraterrestrials and their technology. Well, that is seen as not in the best interest of humanity, because if we were to have disclosure, it would lead to contact. If we were to have contact, it would lead to a technological exchange, and our unethical organizations, our greed, would take over, take that technology, weaponize it, and use against the very individuals that gave it to us. And we would use it, kind of like the Monroe Doctrine, Manifest Destiny, even going after, weapons of mass destruction, or even spreading Christianity around the universe, all those, using those excuses to essentially, do the same thing that we did to the Native Americans, to the Aborigines, just because they're different from us. So that's what they're concerned about. And that's what the paradox is, that if we were to have disclosure, the consequences would be not the kind that we would be expecting, unexpected consequences. And in addition, the paradox is that how are we as a human race supposed to improve ourselves spiritually if we're not allowed to know what's really wrong with us?
Right. I completely agree. And what you've said just is so impactful, because I think about even in the simplest things as the invention of the gun. Now, the gun itself is not a bad invention, but it's the irresponsibility of the person behind the gun
Right.
and their emotions and the volatility of what's created with that. So I am so glad that the extraterrestrials are trying to keep us under control, because you're right, we're so many of the human population are like little children with matches and who's more powerful. And it really disheartens me how society, humans can be so violent towards each other and towards the earth. And I really feel that the extraterrestrials are out there protecting us from ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that what they've done is that they have warned governments that, look, if there is disclosure, um, it's not good. If we find out that they they're telling them, if we have the technology and there's proof that we have technology and we use it in wrong way, there will be a preemptive strike. So I think their governments are concerned about that. They're trying to keep a lid on that. And you mentioned information. I think we're at a point where, because of the internet, it doesn't matter what kind of information goes out there, because people are confused. They can't really tell the difference between a hoax and the truth. And it's so easy now to put together a hoax that is so realistic. So
And people are
they,
easily led like little
yeah,
sheeples, right?
yeah. So there's no denial anymore. They just let the information go. And, yes, I wrote the book as fiction for two reasons: to protect the names or the individuals that I have in the book that I characterize fictionally. And because people, if I wrote it at nonfiction, first of all, I'm not well known in that circle. I can't compete with people like Eric Von Daniken or um, Dolan, or the guys that show up on Ancient Aliens. They have their own circle, and I won't be able to compete with that. And the other thing is that the people that I want to read the book are not the kind of people that read nonfiction of that nature. They're skeptic about that kind of stuff. So I wrote it as fiction to get the attention of people that are skeptical, and to ease them in and give them, look, there's evidence here. You need to know that it's actually happening, and ease them in that, not put it in their face. The book, as someone mentioned, it's kind of like going into a warm bath and easing yourself in, and that's the way I intended.
And I agree, I think, Paul, because a lot of people, we start seeing things in the media, we see it in movies, we read it in books, and we kind of become desensitized to it or used to it. It becomes like normal for us, so that it's like spoon feeding, right? So, Paul, I want to talk to you a minute about the military, industrial, and complex and the hidden truth. So, you've worked inside a system most of us only hear about in thrillers. What can you tell us about how the military handles sensitive information, and how much of the book is fiction and how much is reality in your book?
All right. So Dwight Eisenhower left office, and in his going away speech, he had a cryptic message, and he mentioned the military industrial complex, that we need to be aware of it. It is my hypothesis that the military industrial complex is really running the show regarding extraterrestrial technology, information release, and patents and things like that, because there are theories that there was a meeting set up at Holloman Air Force Base in the 50s with a race that made, first of all, they didn't have any problems with our nuclear program, but they had conditions. And only when Eisenhower was in that meeting with leaders of the industry did he understand what the conditions were. And the conditions were that these extraterrestrials wanted to test humans and livestock, but they wouldn't harm people. And Eisenhower didn't like that. Supposedly he left the meeting, but the guys that remained behind were the representatives of our industry, including the Archbishop of Los Angeles. And they remained behind. And the hypothesis is that they made the agreement with these extraterrestrials and that they got the technology, not our government, not our military. And they've been in control ever since.
Wow, that's huge, Paul. That is huge.
And I think that's why Kennedy was assassinated, because he understood that deal, that relationship, and probably, Eisenhower probably briefed him on it. And Kennedy, he was kind of reckless, and he felt he was bigger than life, and he probably thought that he could save everyone from this. And I think that's probably why he was eliminated.
I had a friend who was in the CIA years and years ago, and he said that the general public doesn't know to what extremes the military goes through, military intelligence, to keep this type of information away from the general public, that kind of keeps us in this little bubble so that we just, like little hamsters, just keep going around on the wheel and doing what we're supposed to do, in society, basically. Mm-hmm. And I believe that.
Yeah. They talk about black programs, right? Those are programs that are not overseen by Congress. You don't know how much is being spent, and that's part of that military-industrial complex thing.
So you hint that intelligent operatives watch public media. Do you ever worry about crossing a line with what you share in the disclosure paradox?
No, because I think I'm a small fish in that pond. There are so many other people that call themselves whistleblowers that are much more direct with their information. First of all, my information is not considered harming national security. Okay, it's different from that. Spirituality does not harm national security. So I think that's probably why I feel that, and I've been also advised by the higher race that I'm not in a position of harm or I won't threat, because the information that I'm passing on is different than the kind of information that the government is concerned about.
Right. So you're in a safe zone. And when you communicate with the extraterrestrials, is it through your meditation work, the channeling, like that?
No, nothing has happened to me in meditation since that cloud indigo experience, which is really frustrating. And the other part is that the woman that is my mentor, the medium, we talk about every 6 months, but there is no change to the information that I get. So I must have fulfilled the mission. And I feel that, I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people that probably have not awakened to what their role is. Something whatever needed to happen hasn't happened to them. And I call them all their sleeper cells. and they're all over the world, I'm sure. And each one has a role, some bigger than others. I had my role. I think I fulfilled it. And then that's why things have been quiet.
I agree. I feel like now is actually a time where a lot of those, as you call them, sleeper cells are actually starting to wake up, which brings me to my next point. So thinking about humanity's readiness and the future, in your book, the extraterrestrials don't invite us to join a universal community. Do you really believe we're not ready? And what flaws do you think we need to overcome first?
Yeah, we're not ready because we still haven't evolved spiritually. Are you still there?
So, Paul, we were talking about humanity's readiness.
Right.
You think that humanity is ready for contact with extraterrestrials?
No, the extraterrestrials recognize us as spiritually corrupt, and there's an equation that I have, and the equation is about spirituality and technology. And the reason we see all these races around us, visiting us and checking us out, because they get it. Their technology is equal to their spirituality and vice versa. They've been around. That equation allows them to be around for a long, long time. They've been around for, many, many millennia beyond us. And we, however, have high technology but very low spirituality. And when you have that in the equation, you have a propensity of self-eradication. When you have higher spirituality and lower technology, it's also bad because you have a chance of being assimilated by a race that is more advanced than you. So it's important that we upgrade our spirituality to the level of our technology, and then we'll be ready to join the community.
Do you think that's an actual possibility, in your opinion, Paul, that we could get to that point?
If we just follow.
Wow. Oh, are you there? Paul? Huh?
Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Did you see that? Oh my God. We were like, how long? It was like May 17th we were talking, and now it's the 27th. How did that happen?
Yeah, and you were in France and now you're in Germany.
I know. I must have teleported or something. This is so cool. And where are you? Are you still in the same place?
I was at home and now I'm at the office.
Oh my goodness. Well, home is much better. So I think, Paul, we were talking about we got what would you call that? Abducted?
You had an outage and then I had an outage, and that was it.
Yeah. And the storm came. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were talking about if the extraterrestrials thought we were ready for it, and you had just mentioned about the were they sleeper cells that were going to be coming, waking up to raise the consciousness?
Yeah, I feel that if first of all, everyone has a role on this planet. Some are bigger than others, and as I mentioned in the book, others have a greater impact on our lives than we have on ourselves. So every life is important to everyone else. But there's also another level, and the level that you mentioned, which is advancing the spirituality of the human race. And that is the intent of the universal community. They want us to be like them. So through a I guess a process where before the human becomes human, the spirit takes on an assignment, and it's the spirit that has the assignment that is linked to the individual. And only when the individual really recognizes things that are happening do they understand their real role. And many that have not understood this, that they have not come to that conclusion yet, are what I would call the sleeper cells. They have yet to be awakened. Fortunately, I was awakened and I understood my role.
So are you a sleeper cell?
I'm not anymore.
You woke up.
Right.
So are sleeper cells, are they hybrids of aliens and humans? Or
They're human. They're human. It's just
chosen.
That they've made an agreement where all the spirits meet to get their next assignment based on their previous life. They made an agreement to be part of the awakening.
Very good. So it's so interesting too, because I think I love the whole power of the storytelling. So you chose to fictionalize your story instead of writing a memoir or expose. So
right.
What does the fiction allow you to explore that nonfiction can't?
Well, the thing about fiction is that there's no bounds. And I made sure that I had key points that I had in the story that were based on experiences that I had, that were based on individuals that I met, and the process that I went through from the very beginning to guide the reader. The other thing is that if I were to write a memoir, because I'm in the military, it would have to have been reviewed by a board. If I write it in fiction, it's a loophole because I state that the book is fiction. There's no truth in there. So the other thing is that I'm allowed to make up characters that are based on real people, and I could even combine 2 or 3 people into one character to make sure that I carry over what I wanted to present about those individuals, instead of populating the book with all kinds of personalities that have only 1 or 2 reasons to be there. Right. So with adding characters to one character based on 3 people in one person, I enrich that character and make it more interesting.
So that's cool, because you've got spiritual introspection, sci-fi wonder, and even what some would describe as Rambo mode action. So how did you find the balance between those genres, and then the characters who you based around those real people, like 3 personalities in one? How did you balance that?
I think I had help, because when I decided to write the book, which is based on the blog that I had to remove because I was getting into the military and it had sensitive information, so I needed to stop the blog. But I kept that information. When I decided to write, I just sat down during a weekend, and in one weekend, I produced 31 pages of outline straight. That's not a normal thing.
That's not normal. Who does that?
Especially when I don't stray from that outline. It was so detailed and so logical, and it came out so fluently for me, and it's like it was natural to me. And mind you, that was the first time that I actually wrote an outline for a book. That I think I had assistance in doing that.
Almost definitely. Because when you're able to write like that, like you said, who does that? Who writes 31 pages? It's just right. That is so amazing. So I'm curious because we had mentioned in one of the times that we got disconnected and interrupted, you have your second book. Was it Salvation is the title of it?
Yep. Here, let me show you something.
Okay.
This is the cover of Salvation.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Do you want me
It's
to
getting real.
read you a synopsis on it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so here it is. And of course, this hasn't been vetted by my publishers yet, because they do a better job of writing the synopsis than I did. So I wrote this prior to publication. So a murder in the Vatican prompts Robert Ladd, security consultant and former Army Ranger, to seek help from Interpol Rome. The chief, with the help of U.S. Embassy and the Holy See, aid Robert to work incognito because Robert cannot trust anyone in the Vatican, even the Interpol chief to the Vatican. The story links an advanced, malevolent race of interdimensional beings to a conspiracy to destroy one of the most precious relics of Jesus' life. It is who Robert is up against, but with the help of his partner Katrina Herman and her spiritual Hikari Apache friend Mary Ellen Velarde and her son Shining Blue, Robert finds out that he also has friends in high places. Although written upon the hypothesis of the blood of Christ having unique power and properties, the story reveals not well publicized truths about the holy relic as revealed by characters based on real scientists and researchers of the Holy Shroud. There is salvation on many levels in the story. The book will certainly open a door for those who are not familiar with the Shroud, or Christians that continue to profess beliefs about Jesus, why he died, and his resurrection.
Fantastic. That's definitely one to be looking forward to reading. So when is this book going to come out? Where are you in the process?
It's ready to be returned to me in the proper format with a draft cover. So, we're done with the manuscript. We're done with selecting the format. I've given them the files to make that cover, which was done by an artist who worked in Warhol's studio in New York. So he's a very good artist and a friend of the family. So October is the target date for the release.
Wow. So you are a very busy man. Very, very busy. And, I was thinking about you a lot since our first part one and all the things that are going on in the world today. And I kept thinking, please, I really, truly hope the extraterrestrials come and get some of these crazy things that are happening these days under control and help us out, because we're having some issues. We're having some problems.
Well, so what I write in the second book, when the main character, Robert Ladd, goes into a coma when because he's attacked, he meets his friend who was murdered in spirit, and he also meets Jesus. And Robert asks, why don't you come and help us? Why don't you, with all the things that are happening? And Jesus says that we, as a human race, are in a school, which is what I profess in the first book. And he says, as me being the teacher, I cannot give you the answers. You're going to have to find it out for yourselves. So that's why we can't, everyone hopes for some divine intervention. It's up to us to figure it out. It's up to us to figure it out. And I've given as many clues and as many answers to help us figure it out. But it won't go beyond that.
Absolutely. And it's so true. It's like we have to go through the journey, through the process, so that we can evolve to that consciousness that the extraterrestrials really hope that we will reach someday, when
Right.
we're being able to level up with our technology and everything. So yeah, we can't miss the journey part of it. That's definitely the learning curve for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So,
a teacher who does not give you the answers to the test, right? No.
right. No, you don't get the cheat sheet. You have to fail and try again and try again. I know that
Right.
well. So, Paul, you wrote that we have a greater impact on others than we do on ourselves. What do you hope readers will take from the message in today's world of AI, nuclear threats, and constant digital connection?
And those are two separate things. You know, we have to understand that whatever interaction that we have with whoever we meet, um, just like they say, treat others as we would like to be treated. That's a very simple rule, and it goes a long way. I feel that AI, it is, because it's another one of those parts of technology where we may not be set up ethically and spiritually to use properly. That there's going to be ways that it will be abused, and there will be ways that maybe that it will be probably taken over control over us because of the things that we're doing with it. So I'm very skeptical about it. And they ask, is your book come from AI, or does your story come from AI? And I say no, because I'm not going to let AI get involved in my creativity. Creativity is a gift that we have, and only when you explore yourself and your own do you actually make use of it. And I think AI is one of those cheating things.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And it's kind of sad to see that there are more and more people becoming dependent on it. And I believe if we view it as a tool and not the answer, then
Right.
because AI is not always right. Anyways, you have to check it. It's going to have errors, but
Yeah.
it's a tool.
I have read somewhere where they were using AI in the medical field to determine the treatment for certain diseases. I'm not, it's technical, but it was very, very interesting that could be one very good benefit. I don't see AI as a benefit in the arts.
Yeah, I know. I can be honest with you. I have read books out there that from the moment I started reading the first couple paragraphs, I could tell that it was produced through AI, and
Really?
that nothing's going to replace that human creativity, that imagination, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Or the sensitivity, the emotion. What do you want the reader to feel when you're reading about a character? And as I mentioned in another interview, you can tell a lot from a character by how they react to a very simple thing that everyone cannot understand. For example, how will the character react when they hold a gun in their hand? There are many different
Exactly.
ways that you can find out. Or when a person, as I put the scenario in the first book, where the main character sees a homeless veteran, and I bring out his character through the way that he reacts with that homeless veteran. So there are many ways that you can define a character by the way that they would react to that veteran. Will they walk away? Will they just look at him and shake their head? Will they go to him and give him money but not talk to him? Will they give him money, talk to him? Will they give him money, talk to him, and actually do something for him? Those are all different incremental actions that increase their level of spirituality to me.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And there's nothing that can replace the human experience, because we
Right.
feel it with our five senses and emotions. And that's something that AI comes close to, but can never replace. So I completely agree with you. So, Paul, is there something, a special message or words of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners about your experience, the books?
Just that the lesson is, and if we all took to a lesson, that then I think we would be able to improve the way things are on the planet if everyone did it. But we're here to make life better for others instead of making life better for ourselves at the expense of others. Very simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring no harm to others. I completely agree. Paul, thank you so much for sharing your journey and part 1 and part 2 and bearing with this whole process. You're just amazing, and giving us a glimpse into the real stories behind the disclosure paradox. Your blend of truth, fiction, and spirit has definitely left us with a lot to think about. To all my viewers, if you're ready to question reality and explore humanity's future from one whole new perspective, grab a copy of The Disclosure Paradox and maybe read it with one eye open. Don't forget to like, or your third eye open. Absolutely. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming author interviews and book breakdowns. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep turning those pages. That's in order. How's it go? Nanu, something like this.
Yeah, right.
The Spock.
I cannot do that.
I can. It hurts my fingers. It's a good. There we go. Over and out, Scotty. Thank you so much, Paul. Take care, and we'll see you on The Salvation, the next book.
All right. Thank you.
Bye for now.